Hi there. I'm Ashita, and I'm so excited to dive into Copilot with you today. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about Copilot and AI these past few months, and I'm here today to break it down to you and explain how all of it works. So let's get started with a quick refresher. What is Copilot? By definition, it is a processing engine that combines the power of large language models with your Microsoft Graph data and Microsoft 365 apps to capture the natural language commands to produce content, analyze data, build presentations, and so much more. The goal is that Copilot works alongside you, embedded in the apps that your students and educators are already using on a daily basis, such as Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and Excel, to help increase productivity and efficiency. So how does Copilot get its natural language? Well, it has two main components called Large Language Model and Microsoft Graph that help it respond in a natural language to your prompts and questions. Let's start by breaking down Microsoft Graph. So in simple terms, it provides the access to the data stored in Microsoft 365 services. So Copilot calls the Microsoft Graph API, or the Application Programming Interface, to connect to the data in Microsoft Graph and to gain more context from things such as your emails, files, meetings, chats, and calendar events. And what are large language models? Well, large language models are computer programs that have been trained on massive amounts of public data, including books, articles, and websites, to learn language, context, and meaning. They've learned how words and sentences can fit together and can generate new text that sounds like something a person such as yourself or me would say or write. So you interact with large language models in Copilot with something called a prompt, which is basically a statement or a question. For instance, a prompt that you can give Copilot is, give me a recap of the group project meeting yesterday with Serena and Jessica. When you ask a question in the prompt, the large language model generates a response based on its public data training and understanding of context, which depends on how you phrase your prompt. So as you continue to ask questions and get responses, the large language model is temporarily getting more context. But something important to remember is that it only remembers the conversation while it's in that conversation, so the chat history is wiped clean with each new conversation that you have with Copilot. So now let's piece all of this information together to understand how Microsoft 365 apps, large language models, and Microsoft Graph work together in Copilot. Starting off, Copilot has its own default prompt for responsible rules for interaction. This includes things like where to search to find the right information for a prompt, such as calling the Microsoft Graph to gain more context, like your recent documents or messages. Importantly, this default prompt gets appended to your prompt whenever you interact with Copilot. The Microsoft 365 Copilot Orchestrator combines the default prompt with your prompt, plus any additional information it's gathered and will form one long prompt to present to the large language model in order to generate a response. Now let's go over an example. Let's say you wanted to know if there were any updates with Fabricam yesterday. If you asked the model, did anything happen with Fabricam yesterday? Copilot didn't just send that question or prompt directly to the large language model. Instead, Copilot knew that it needed more knowledge and context. So using clues from the user's question, like Fabricam, it inferred that it needed to search for content sources. The Copilot Orchestrator searched the Microsoft Graph for activities. So in this situation, it found that the email thread from Mona, which the user had already received, activities in the project checklist and March planning presentation, which are files that the user already had access to, as well as the sharing action when the final contract was sent to Fabricam for review, again, where the user would have already been part of the share activity. And Copilot cited each source of information so that the user could easily validate the response. In the next video series, I will show examples of how Copilot can benefit you in education specifically. So that is Copilot broken down for you. I hope that whether you are an educator, student, IT administrator, or someone just curious to learn more about Copilot, this video helped you learn how Copilot works and how it can be used as a tool that boosts productivity for us inside and outside of the classroom. Stay tuned for the next video, which we will go over how to use Copilot in M365 apps.